"You had your time, Mom. We'll handle things our way." Tara laughed as if fairness were a joke told over dinner. I didn't correct her. I only folded the envelope in my lap, the one her husband hadn't seen yet, and smiled. "If you're listening, subscribe and tell me where you're from. I am Ruth Delaney, 67, a retired nurse who still wakes early. My house sits on a quiet street in Mankato, not far from the river. I married Frank when I was 21, and we built a steady life with simple rules. Pay bills on time, keep promises, tell the truth even when it hurts. He kept the lake house his father built, a square cabin with a red door and a dock that holds summer. We spent weekends there fishing for perch and counting loons at dusk. When Frank became ill, we drove there after each treatment and sat on the steps. He would say, 'Leave it for the family,' and I would nod and squeeze his hand. After he passed, I kept the key on a plain chain and visited twice a month. I cleaned the gutters myself and paid the taxes before the first notice came. My son Aaron married Tara 4 years ago, and I tried to love her from day one. She was bright, driven, always planning events that looked perfect in photos. She hugged me hard at the wedding and said, 'We are a team now.' I wanted to believe that, so I offered what I had, steady help and a calm house. I cooked on Sundays and kept extra sheets ready for their visits. I shared stories about Frank that were more useful than sentimental. How he fixed a broken hinge with patience, how he balanced a budget when the truck needed work. Aaron listened, but Tara watched me the way a buyer watches a room. Her eyes went to the lake photos, the tax folder on the shelf, the small safe in the hall closet. I did not hide anything because I did not think I needed to. I live modestly, and I like modest things that last. A kettle that whistles, a broom that fits my hand, a chair that does not scrape the floor. I keep a ledger in blue ink, 1 page for each month, and a copy of Frank's will folded flat in a manila sleeve. The will is not complex, but it is clear. The house where I live goes to Aaron, but only after my death, and the lake house stays in the family trust under my care for as long as I am alive. Frank named me trustee, and he named a successor if I could not serve. He chose a quiet lawyer in town because quiet men read every line. "It does not take fancy," Frank said once. "It takes paper and patience." I believed him, and I still do, even when the room grows loud. It began a few days after Frank's 3rd memorial. The air was still cold, the ground still hard. Aaron and Tara invited me over for brunch, saying they wanted to talk about next steps. Their tone was cheerful, but I felt something rehearsed beneath it. When I arrived, the table was set neatly, every napkin folded into a triangle. Tara poured coffee, her bracelets clinking. "We've been thinking about the lake place," she said, smiling. "It's such a beautiful property. It could really work for us long term." I nodded slowly. "It already works for the family," I said. "It's where Aaron learned to swim." She laughed lightly, the kind of laugh people use when they've already decided something. "Oh, we're not erasing memories, Mom. We just want to give it a new life, maybe renovate it, make it more modern." I looked at Aaron, who avoided my eyes. "You'd need approval for that," I said. Frank's will was clear. Tara tilted her head and said, "Oh, that old paper? It was written in another time. We'll handle things our way now." Something in me stilled. Not anger, just a heavy quiet. I said, "If you want to modernize, I can help." She smiled again, polite and sharp. "We'll call you when we need advice." The room hummed with small noises, the spoon tapping her mug, the radiator clicking, and I realized that my words no longer carried weight in this house. I finished my coffee, stood, and thanked them for breakfast. When I returned home, I went straight to my desk. The manila folder with Frank's will sat where I always kept it, under the old lamp. But when I opened it, the will was gone. In its place was a new folder labeled Estate Simplification Plan, typed neatly with my name under it. Inside were notes, contractor quotes, a projected sale value of $84,000, and a rough list titled Potential Buyers, Lakeshore West. None of it was written in my handwriting. That evening, I called Aaron. "Did you take something from my desk?" I asked. He hesitated. "Tara borrowed a few papers. She's helping organize everything." "You know how she is," I said. "Yes, I do," he said. "Mom, don't worry, it's just paperwork." I wanted to ask if he'd read the will lately, but I stopped myself. The less they knew about what I knew, the better. The next day, I drove to the lake house. The snow was melting in patches, the water dark and still. I walked around the porch, checking the locks. Everything was as I'd left it, except for a small, for sale preparation tag tied to the old dock ladder. I untied it, folded it into my pocket, and sat on the steps. I could hear Frank's voice in my head. Paper and patience. When I returned home, I checked every drawer for the original will. Nothing. The copy I'd kept with my tax documents was missing too. That night, I wrote my first entry in a new notebook. March 4. Folder replaced. House discussed for sale. Value quoted at $84,000. Numbers steadied me. They couldn't lie. A week later, Tara called. Mom, just a heads up. A couple of contractors might stop by the cabin to measure. We'll keep you updated. Her tone was cheerful, but the ownership in her words was not. I'll be there, I said. She paused. No need, really. We're handling it. I'll still be there, I said again, gently. She laughed quietly. You don't need to make it complicated. That night, I drove to the lake house again, parked by the edge, and took photos of every room, the fireplace, the attic beams, the old chest by the window. Proof of what existed before someone else decided to erase it. When I returned home, I placed the memory card in a small jewelry box. My first truth prop, though I didn't call it that yet. I just called it common sense. The next morning, I found a new envelope in my mailbox, marked Property Appraisal Client Copy. The return address was a realty company I didn't know. Inside were printed photos of my lake house labeled Current Condition and a valuation sheet signed by Tara. Under owner's contact, her name was written, not mine. The line under it said, Authorization received. I sat at the kitchen table with the paper in front of me and poured myself tea. I didn't cry or curse. I just whispered, All right, Frank, let's handle this the right way. The following Monday, I drove into town before sunrise. The streets were slick from rain, and the sky looked washed clean. I parked in front of Latham and Myers, the law office Frank and I had used for years. The receptionist recognized me and smiled kindly. Good morning, Mrs. Delaney. It's been a while. I nodded. I need to see Peter. Within minutes, Peter Latham appeared, same calm face, same slow way of speaking. Ruth, he said warmly, how are you holding up? I smiled faintly. Doing what Frank taught me, checking the paper before the people. In his office, I explained everything. The missing will, the new documents, the appraisal letter. He listened without interrupting, hands folded. When I finished, he opened his drawer and pulled out a file. Your husband's original will is still on record, he said. Unchanged. It names you as trustee of the lake property until your passing. No transfer can occur without your written consent. I exhaled slowly, steady but relieved. Can I get a certified copy? He nodded. Of course. I'll have one printed and sealed for you today. While we waited, I asked if anyone had requested to view or alter the file. He looked at his screen. Someone made an inquiry through the county record portal last week under Aaron's name. No documents changed, but there was an access log. I felt the small muscles in my jaw tighten. Could they do anything with that? Not legally, he said. But if they filed something outside the system, you'd need proof to challenge it. He slid a copy of the access record toward me. Here, this will help. I left the office carrying 2 envelopes, one with the certified will, one with the access log. They felt heavier than their weight. I drove straight to the county clerk's office, where an older woman named Janice worked behind the counter. She'd known Frank from his volunteer days. I asked if she could check whether any title changes were pending on our lake property. She tapped her keyboard for a long moment, then said, No title transfer filed, but there was an inquiry about ownership verification from a private firm called Pinecrest Realty. Do you know them? I do now, I said. She printed the record and handed it to me. Keep this, she said softly. If anyone tries to push something through, this will show the timeline. I thanked her and folded the paper carefully into my bag. My second truth prop. On the way home, I stopped by the post office and asked Harold, the clerk, if he could hold my mail at the desk instead of delivering it. He'd been my neighbor years ago, and I trusted him. Just for a few weeks, I said. I think some of my mail's been misplaced. He gave me a knowing look and said, Say no more. That afternoon, when I returned home, I found Tara's car parked in my driveway. She was inside the house with Aaron, papers spread across the table. "Mom," Aaron said, "we're working through the estate details. Don't worry, Tara's on top of it." I set my purse down quietly. "I'm sure she is," I said. Tara smiled, that same rehearsed warmth. "We want to simplify things for you," she said. "Less paperwork, more comfort." "Comfort's never been my issue," I said, keeping my voice light. When she left the room to answer a call, I looked at Aaron. "Son, have you seen your father's will recently?" He shook his head. "Not since the funeral." "Why?" I looked at him for a moment. "Because you might want to read it before signing anything new." He frowned but didn't ask more. That night, I placed both envelopes, the certified will and the county record, inside the old family Bible Frank's mother had given us. The leather was worn, the spine cracked, but it still held firm. I wrapped a ribbon around it and slid it under my bed. Then I wrote in my new journal, April 9, 2 documents secured, inquiry confirmed, Pinecrest Realty involved. The next morning Tara texted, "Contractors scheduled for Thursday. Will you be around?" I replied, "Always." That evening, I called Nina Clark, a friend from my nursing days, who knew how to read people and paperwork. When I told her what was happening, she said simply, "You're doing fine, Ruth. Just don't flinch. Let them dig their own hole. You keep the paper." I smiled at that. Paper, patience, and one more thing, timing. Nina arrived 2 days later, holding a grocery bag with blueberry muffins and her reading glasses. She was one of those friends who didn't knock, she just came in saying, "Coffee on?" I nodded, already pouring 2 cups. Once we sat, she listened as I laid out the papers across the kitchen table. The certified will, the access record, the county log, and my journal. She read each page slowly, lips pressed together in concentration. When she finished, she leaned back and said, "You've got everything you need. Now you just need to keep calm long enough to use it right." That was Nina, clear, unsentimental, and loyal. We'd worked side by side in the ICU for 20 years, handling crises without panic. "You think they'll back off once they see proof?" I asked. She shook her head. "People like that don't stop because they're wrong. They stop when they realize you can prove it." I smiled faintly. Frank used to say, "Paper lasts longer than memory." Frank was right, she said. We made a file together, clean copies only. No originals labeled Lake Property Trust, legal reference. She placed a sticky note on the folder and wrote, "Grace isn't silence. It's truth delivered without noise." I read the line twice. "That's your philosophy now?" I asked. She grinned. "Always has been." Before she left, she said, "You don't need to argue with them. Let the documents do the talking. If Tara keeps pushing, you already hold the end of the story." I walked her to the porch, the evening air cool and still. "You always make things sound simple," I said. She smiled. "That's because they are, once you stop trying to be nice to everyone." When she drove away, I stood for a moment and watched the taillights fade down the road. Then I went back inside, collected the papers, and placed the clean folder in my small home safe. The originals I kept under the Bible, where they had always belonged. That night, I wrote one more entry in my journal. April 11, Nina confirmed all documents, folder prepared. Next family dinner scheduled Sunday. I underlined Sunday twice. I didn't plan to confront anyone. I only planned to stop pretending I didn't know. The pressure began quietly, the way water seeps through a wall before you notice the cracks. A week after Nina's visit, Tara sent me an email labeled Property Coordination Plan. The message sounded polite, but the attachments told another story contractor estimates, floor plans, and a budget forecast listing me as a silent co-signer. I replied with a single sentence. "No authorization has been granted." She didn't respond. 2 days later, I received a call from the power company. "Mrs. Delaney," the representative said, "we were notified to transfer utilities for the lake property to your son's household account." I gripped the phone and asked, "By whose instruction?" The woman paused. "It came through an online request, says verified by household administrator." I thanked her, hung up, and wrote the date in my journal. May 2 utility transfer requested without consent. That same afternoon, a white truck pulled into my driveway. 2 men stepped out carrying measuring tape and clipboards. "We're here for the lake renovation assessment," one said. "Tara sent us." I smiled. The owner didn't. They hesitated, exchanged glances, and left. I stood by the window until their truck disappeared. That evening, Aaron called, sounding tired. "Mom," Tara said, "you turned away the contractors." I said, "Yes, because I didn't hire them." He sighed. "She's just trying to help manage things. We want to make sure the property doesn't fall into disrepair. The roof's been replaced, taxes paid, utilities current," I said evenly. "What disrepair?" He hesitated. "She thinks it's inefficient to hold two houses." "It's family, Aaron," I said softly. "Not inventory." There was silence on the line. "I'll talk to her," he said finally, but his tone carried doubt more than resolve. In the following days, the small intrusions continued. A plumber showed up unannounced, claiming he was told to evaluate winterization. My property tax notice arrived with a new mailing address, Aaron's home, not mine. I logged each event with timestamps, numbers, and names. By mid-May, my journal had grown thick, 12 site visits, 4 unsigned forms, 3 address changes. When I showed the list to Nina, she nodded slowly. "You're building a timeline," she said. "Keep it factual. Dates don't lie." Each evening, I checked the mailbox and found new envelopes. Realtor letters, insurance notices, all referencing pending renovation. Everyone carried my name but someone else's handwriting on the return. I made photocopies at the library, stapled them to the journal pages, and stored them in the file marked Lake Property Trust Evidence. At dinner one night, Tara smiled across the table and said, "We've been busy lately, Mom. You'll love what we're planning for the cabin." I stirred my tea slowly. "Will I?" I asked. "Of course," she said, cheerful as ever. "You won't have to worry about any of it. We're taking that burden off your hands." I met her eyes. I wasn't aware my name had become a burden. The smile slipped for half a second before she recovered. "You're misunderstanding. We just want to make things easier." I said nothing. Aaron shifted uncomfortably, sensing the gap widening but not knowing how to bridge it. By June, my patience hardened into resolve. I visited the bank and spoke to the estate manager. "I'd like to verify all accounts linked to the Delaney Trust," I said. He typed for a moment and frowned. "There was an access request from an outside party last month, denied for insufficient documentation." I nodded. "Please flag it, and make a note that I'll be in with my attorney next week." He agreed and printed a confirmation receipt. Another page for my file. That night, I sat at the kitchen table under the dim light of Frank's old lamp. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. I opened the will again, tracing Frank's signature with my finger. This document serves as binding instruction under Minnesota law. The words steadied me like an old friend's voice. I folded the paper, slipped it into a plastic sleeve, and placed it inside an envelope labeled, "To be opened if contested." I sealed it and tucked it under the Bible. My second sealed copy went to Nina's house for safekeeping. When I saw Aaron the next weekend, I mentioned none of it. Instead, I asked about work, about Lila's piano lessons, about life. He looked relieved by the normal conversation. I wanted to keep it that way until I had every piece in order. Sometimes, love means letting people fall asleep in their illusions until the truth can wake them gently. By July, everything was ready. 12 documented visits, 4 contractors contacted, 3 unauthorized requests, 2 sealed envelopes, 1 undeniable record of ownership. I waited for the right time, and it came on a quiet Sunday morning when Tara called to invite me for a family planning dinner. Her tone was sweet, almost cheerful. I said, "Of course, dear. I'll bring dessert." That night, I wrote in my journal, "July 10 dinner scheduled, evidence secured. Tomorrow, Grace will speak in paper." The dinner was arranged for 6 o'clock on a Sunday, the same time we used to gather when Frank was alive. The table looked beautiful: candles, folded napkins, polished silverware. Tara always did love presentation. I brought a pie, set it on the counter, and noticed a folder already waiting on the table labeled Property Transition Plan. She poured wine before I Saturday. "Let's make this easy, Mom," she said lightly. "We'll go through everything, sign a few forms, and celebrate a new chapter." I smiled and said, "I like new chapters, but I prefer to finish the current one first." Aaron looked tired, older than his years. "Mom, we just want to organize things so everyone's comfortable." "Comfortable," I repeated. That's a nice word. I just want to be sure comfort doesn't erase history. Tara laughed quietly. We're not erasing, we're improving. The lake house will be worth twice as much after renovation. We already have an offer lined up, pending title confirmation. She said it like it was an accomplishment. I folded my napkin neatly and asked, "And who gave you the right to list it?" She glanced at Aaron, then back at me. "It's all in progress, Mom. The trust paperwork is confusing, but we're streamlining." I reached into my bag and placed an envelope on the table. "Then you might want to see this before you streamline any further." She frowned but kept her tone sweet. "What's that?" "A certified copy of Frank's will," I said. "The document you seem to have misplaced." Aaron leaned forward as I slid it toward him. "You can read it aloud if you'd like." He unfolded it carefully. The sound of the paper seemed louder than the room. "Clause 3, I said. "Trustee authority remains with Ruth Delaney for her lifetime. No sale, modification, or transfer shall occur without her written consent." Tara's smile faltered, just a fraction, but enough. "This must be outdated," she said. "Frank talked to us about simplifying before he passed." "Then I suppose you'll have his signature on that," I said calmly. "Because without it, this is the only version that stands." Aaron kept reading, eyes narrowing. "It's notarized, Tara, filed and sealed." She reached for her glass, hand trembling slightly. "This isn't a fight, Mom," she said, softer now. "We're just trying to build a future." I met her gaze. "A future doesn't need theft to begin, only truth." Aaron looked up from the will. "Did you know about this?" he asked her quietly. She said nothing. He turned to me. "You should have told me sooner." I nodded. "You weren't ready to hear it. Now you are." I opened my second folder and placed the county access log beside the will. "Someone submitted an ownership verification under your name last month," I said. "It wasn't you. I confirmed that with the clerk." Aaron studied the printout. His jaw tightened. "Tara?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I just wanted to help move things along," she said finally. I kept my voice even. "Help comes with honesty, not assumptions. Frank built that house for family, not for profit. You called it potential. He called it home." Aaron set down the papers slowly. "We'll stop everything," he said. "No contractors, no sale." Tara started to speak, but he raised his hand. "Enough." The word was quiet but firm. I unfolded my small journal, the one I'd carried through these months. "This," I said, "isn't about punishment. It's about order." I turned it around so they could see the neat columns of dates and notes. 12 visits, 4 unauthorized requests, 1 forged address change. And still, I stayed silent. I met Tara's eyes. Because silence isn't surrender, it's a test. No one spoke for several seconds. The only sound was the faint hiss of the radiator. Then I reached into my bag again and brought out a third envelope. "This," I said, "is a sealed declaration prepared by my lawyer, confirming my authority and notarized under Minnesota law. It will remain on file permanently." Tara's eyes widened. "You already?" "Yes," I said. "Weeks ago." Aaron rubbed his temples. "Mom, I don't know what to say," I said. "You don't have to say anything. Just learn the difference between managing and meddling." He nodded slowly, the realization settling in. "We'll make this right," he said. "Tomorrow morning, we'll meet with Peter and correct the records." Tara exhaled and whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I believe that," I said softly. "But harm doesn't need intent, it just needs carelessness." I gathered the papers into a neat pile and slid them back into my bag. "Frank handled things his way," I said, standing, "and he did it. In writing." Aaron rose with me, silent. Tara stayed seated, staring down at the tablecloth as if the pattern might give her answers. I reached for my coat and paused. "One more thing," I said. "If either of you ever want to know what fairness looks like, read a will. It's the only place where people speak clearly once they're gone." I left the pie on the counter. The drive home was quiet, snow beginning to fall in soft flakes that blurred the road. I didn't feel triumph, only relief, the kind that comes when something fragile finally lands without breaking. The next morning, Aaron showed up at my door, holding 2 travel mugs of coffee and the folder I'd left behind. His face was drawn, pale, and older somehow. "I didn't sleep," he said quietly. "We're going to the lawyer first thing." I nodded and reached for my coat. "Good," I said. "It's time we finished what your father started." At Latham and Myers, Peter greeted us with a raised brow but no surprise. "I had a feeling I'd see you both today," he said. Aaron explained everything: the renovation plan, the unauthorized requests, the listings. Peter listened in silence, then opened the will again, tapping his pen against the trustee clause. "This document is explicit," he said. "Mrs. Delaney holds lifetime control. Any attempted transfer without her consent would be null and void." Aaron nodded, eyes lowered. "We'll withdraw everything," he said. Peter slid a paper across the desk. "Then sign this declaration of correction. It officially voids the pending listing." Aaron signed first, his hand steady. "And Tara?" Peter asked. "She'll sign too," I said softly. "Once she understands that respect is not a negotiation." Peter smiled faintly. "You've handled this well, Ruth." "Just as Frank would have," I replied. He nodded once. "With patience and paper." Afterward, Aaron drove me home. The air between us was quiet but softer than before. "Halfway there," he said. "I should have listened sooner." I looked out the window. We all hear truth at our own volume. When we pulled into my driveway, I placed a hand on his arm. "We'll be fine," I said. "But from now on, we keep everything in writing." He smiled sadly. "Deal." The following days unfolded without tension. No more contractor calls, no more letters. Tara sent a short message 2 evenings later. "I've apologized to Aaron. I'll call you soon." I didn't respond right away. I waited until I could answer without anger, only honesty. 3 days later, I texted back. "I accept your apology. Let's take small steps forward." That weekend, she came by alone. No makeup, no bright voice, just quiet humility. "I returned all the property documents to the safe," she said. "And I told Aaron you were right, about everything." I nodded. "It's not about being right," I said. "It's about being fair." She looked around the living room, at the family photos and the framed lake picture. "I didn't realize how much this meant to him, and to you. Now you do," I said gently. She took a slow breath. "If you'll let me, I'd like to help repair what I almost broke." I smiled. "You start by showing up, the rest follows." Over the next week, the balance began to settle. Aaron handled the last of the paperwork with Peter. I reopened the family trust account in my name only. Nina came by to help organize my folders, labeling each by year. "Everything clean again," she said. "No dust, no drama." "Just the way I like it," I said. I also updated my will not to change beneficiaries, but to make boundaries explicit. Aaron would inherit both houses after my time, but I added a clause naming Nina as co-executor. "In case love ever clouds judgment again," I told her. She laughed. "You really are a nurse at heart, always preventing before treating." "Old habits," I said. A week later, I took a quiet walk around the lake house. The red door was faded but strong. I ran my hand along the wood railing Frank built 30 years ago. For the first time in months, the air felt still and safe. A blue heron crossed the water, and I thought, it's not justice that calms the heart, it's clarity. When I got home, I placed every document, the certified will, the correction notice, the notarized declaration into one box labeled Resolved. Then I tucked the key inside a small envelope marked Aaron. It wasn't forgiveness I wanted to pass down, but order. Order is a quieter kind of love. That night, I wrote the final page in my journal. All steps completed, house secure. Family learning truth the right way. I closed the book and placed it in the same drawer where Frank's wedding ring rested. 6 months later, the world had softened again. The lake thawed early that spring, and the red door gleamed after Aaron came by to repaint it himself. Tara joined him, quiet but steady, carrying sandwiches and a small bouquet for the porch table. I made tea while they worked. When the paint dried, we sat together watching the light ripple across the water. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, just the simple comfort of people learning to breathe in the same space again. Aaron visits often now, usually with Lila. She runs down the dock, her laughter filling the air the way Frank's voice once did. Tara takes photos, but not for show this time, just small moments, proof that peace doesn't always need witnesses. She's gentler, more careful in how she speaks, and sometimes she helps me sort through old files, reading each label before handing them back. "You really keep everything," she said once, half smiling. "Paper keeps the truth," I replied. "It never argues." Nina still calls every Sunday morning, asking if the house feels lighter. I tell her it does. We laugh about how drama fades faster than good ink. And every time I open the trust folder now, I see her note still tucked inside. Grace isn't silence. It's truth delivered without noise. That line has become my compass. One afternoon, as I watched the lake turn gold at sunset, I thought about Frank. He'd always said the will wasn't just paperwork. It was his way of keeping the family honest long after he was gone. He was right. Paper outlives pride, and dignity, once written clearly, doesn't need to shout to be heard. I poured myself a cup of tea, the same way I had on the day all this began, and smiled quietly. Some people fight for control, others just sign their name and wait for the truth to surface. Thanks for listening. Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.